Hey there, startup founders and early employees. This is George Soto from Sales for Startups.
I could have it all if only you were here.
Good morning, startup founders and early employees. It's George Soto. Hope all is well and everyone is giving their maximum effort trying to build their businesses. Today, I wanted to talk about really the idea behind what it takes to have a competitive edge in technology sales in general, but then, of course, specifically as it relates to the startup experience. And I was actually doing a workshop at an incubator here in San Francisco a couple days ago called Acceleprise, which is really fantastic. I am actually not sure what their exact spelling of their. I should probably know this. In any case, it's Excel. It's ACCELEPRISE.VC. Check it out. They're doing some really cool things. They're a startup incubator here in San Francisco and I think New York that focuses on building B2B or enterprise software startups. So check it out. So, as I was doing this workshop, it really became apparent to me that, in technology today, it's really, really hard to, as a product, as an organization, to really develop a competitive edge. And I think that's why salespeople more than ever are incredibly, incredibly important in a sales effort, right? And I wanted to talk a little bit about that today, but I wanted to really talk about two main concepts behind what you could do to really give yourself a competitive edge while selling. And so the first one is really having an authentic interest in your prospect and in your space. I mean, these are not like crazy, sort of complicated concepts. Having a genuine, authentic interest in your prospect, and really this means beyond just the actual sale, right? Get to know these individuals, have conversations, have very authentic conversations. Be you who you are in front of your friends and your colleagues, etc. Be that same individual in front of your prospect, right? And that'll really convey and develop a lot of trust. I can assure you of that. Now, obviously, you have to be, cognizant of what you're saying and etc. I joke around with my friends a lot of times and use humor that I wouldn't use in a business meeting. But I think you can still really be yourself. Okay, really, really important, and have a real interest in your prospect's life. Now, again, you have to kind of sit back and say, okay, ask yourself, is this the type of individual that I can actually talk about, personal life, topics, their family, their interests, that kind of stuff. But I always recommend just testing it out and asking them a question, seeing that they respond back. And just as you would when you were developing, relationships in your interpersonal life. So that's the one really powerful concept: connecting and having an incredibly authentic interest in the prospect as a human being. Okay, number one. Number two, in the space. Now, I know we all need jobs, and if I was to be speaking about just kind of the business world in general and not specifically startups, I could understand that maybe you would take a job that you're not that passionate about overall, or you see yourself doing it for free. But it's interesting enough to have a career within. I kind of get that concept. Like, I personally don't live that type of life, but in any case, that's another topic. But you're at a startup. This is your company. It's incredibly important that you have an incredibly high level of passion for this space. Okay, and that's kind of a segue into our next topic in a second here. But really sit there and think about that. Like, that passion will be communicated to your prospects and then other stakeholders that you interface with internally and externally, right, outside of your organization. But you know, I think that when we talk about, well, what are the characteristics of showing or displaying passion for the space, you know, things like really understanding what's going on with the competitive market, understanding what the pros and cons or the strengths and weaknesses of your market are, or your space, right? And you know, being really authentic and and communicative about that. The other thing is, like, you know, I think that being able to articulate a struggle or challenge that, you know, a specific space might encounter, but also have a very thoughtful way of talking about why your solution and what you're doing as an individual, as a founder, as an employee, what you're trying to solve and why you're in the space, et cetera, and how you're different. So I think that's really, really, really important. And that's kind of a great segue into the next topic, and that's being an expert in the room. Again, in a world where things become incredibly commoditized very, very quickly in technology, where products pivot and evolve and change, you know, really overnight, how do you really have that competitive edge? And I really, truly believe there are obviously a couple different pieces to that puzzle, but if you can be the expert in the room who's incredibly passionate and thoughtful about the space, that gives you such a competitive advantage. You're not just a salesperson. I'm not going to label it a consultative selling. There's a ton of different kind of concepts out there, methodologies, but I'm saying very simply, be the expert in the room. Understand everything about your space, again, pros and cons, and about your product. Like, what does your product do really, really well? And as a startup founder or early employee, you really have this unique opportunity. Now listen in, you have a really unique opportunity to meet with engineering, to meet with the product team, to spend some time at lunchtime, not hanging out with the sales folks or with the business folks only, but sitting down and having conversations like, what are we doing really well under the hood? You know, our back end, our front end, what's the future? Like, you know, how do we stack up from a technology perspective against the other competitors in the space, right? You know, how can we improve the way the user interface? You know, all these sorts. I hope you get my drift here. It's really understanding your space, your technology, your product in and out. So you can literally walk into a meeting and not just be that individual trying to sell, but really having a thoughtful conversation about, man, multiple pieces of the puzzle here. And I think that's incredibly important. I actually have a friend of mine, Jill Conrath, who I'm going to give a little shout out to here. She's written a book called Agile Selling, so you should check it out here. This is what it looks like. Okay, Jill, shout out. And well, first of all, I love the book, and one of the core concepts rather is really the idea of being agile and being able to kind of move with the industry. And this requires you to be an expert, to know why my product A today is doing really well and why it might not do really well tomorrow, and how we have to evolve. And sometimes product and engineering cannot evolve at the same rate that we can as salespeople. We can tell the story a little different, talk about how it evolves, and solve the problem before it even, or maybe even there's an objection there if you have a really savvy buyer or prospect, be able to solve that problem before it even comes into play or into reality. I mean, again, I hope you get the concept here is really having incredible passion for the space, A, B, being that really expert in the room, and as I initially mentioned, having an authentic interest in your prospect, in your space. Anyway, startup founders and early employees, I hope that's helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me, and that's jorge@sales4startups.org. We do events all over the United States and the now expanding internationally, workshops, our sales labs, these kinds of things. And if you have any questions via Twitter, I'm always on Twitter. It's at handle SOTO Ventures. So that's Soto Ventures. And we'll be talking soon. Thanks again.